I'm super excited to be back here, and the first time I was invited to PopTech, I got this email from Andrew, and he emailed the iWriter team. He's like, where do you guys exist in the world? Like, we want you to come to PopTech. And I wrote him back and I said, I'm in the same building as you. I'm actually in the same floor as you. I pass your office every day. We probably share the same bathroom. And that was my first time to PopTech. And my second time to PopTech, I think a couple months ago, I was walking down the street, and Andrew, I think he almost ran me over. He was parking his car with his daughter, and I was taking my daughter out for a stroll. And so I'm super happy to be here and happy to be so close to PopTech, physically close and emotionally close to PopTech. And what I would like to do actually is start with something totally different, because you're going to hear a lot of speaking, but I actually want you on your feet, so stand up. And what I want you to do is I want you to take your right hand, and I want you to put your right hand on the shoulder of somebody that you don't know. Okay. And then I want you to take your left hand and put it on the shoulder of somebody else that you don't know. And now what I want you to do as quickly as possible, because I'm eating my seconds now, I want you to introduce yourself and make a friend. And I should make you talk to each other for 18 minutes, and that will be my talk. I won't have to do anything. It would be awesome. So how many of you started something new this year, like a new job or a new business or a new relationship or a new child? Okay, so I started something new, and it's actually really super hard and weird to talk about something new. It's easy to talk about old things, and I talk about projects a lot, and they're like pebbles, they're smooth, and you know what they mean. And new things are really complicated, and it's like I know how I got myself into trouble. I don't know how I'm going to get myself out of trouble. So I'm going to talk about poems, not demos, and specifically a school that we started this year called the School for Poetic Computation. And I'll sort of talk about the name, and the talk is sort of structured around the name and what it means. And so I've been really interested in school and teaching for a long time, and I've been teaching at a school called Parsons School of Design, for about 10 years. And this is what my ID card looks like. It's super worn out. You can still see my name, but that's about it. I've been there for forever, and this was my last class, my last group of students. And I've been teaching in the university for a while, and I loved it. I love the students. And one of the things that, I always come in the first day of class, I would say, I adopt you. But actually, it's the students that adopted me. There was this great kind of feeling that I had teaching, and one of the things that I promoted as a professor is this idea of fearlessness. And specifically, I was teaching artists and designers how to work with code and computation, and trying to teach them to be fearless about using code, and specifically this message that this is not hard. So for example, out of this teaching came an open source library. This was a tool that was developed for my students and with my students, and Open Frameworks is a kind of product of the teaching, of this kind of years at Parsons. So it's essentially a library of code. You can think about it as small building blocks of code for artists and designers to make creative projects with. And the idea we had is that, you would think, like, to do interesting things with software, I need a computer science degree. But actually, we wanted to make it so that you don't need to read a lot of the books. You just need to look at a few of the books, and then you can connect those ideas outside of the computer science section to some other section in the bookstore. Open Frameworks is used for a lot of projects, and one of the nice things about open source is you put this tool out there, and then there's so many kind of like creative, strange places it goes, and the sort of things that people do with it, and that's one of the sort of joys of working in this field. And I had an amazing sort of epiphany this last year, which is I started to work with, I was on a council with a woman named Carol Becker. And Carol Becker is the dean of the art school at Columbia. And before that, she was the dean of the art school at the Art Institute of Chicago. And Carol Becker writes really eloquently about what a school should be. She's one of the people that I think has the most beautiful writing about the potential of a school. And I started to look around my university and feel like, although I love the students, this is not what I want. I want to make a new school something different. And I started to see a lot of things happening at universities that really made me afraid. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening in higher education that I was really scared of. There's a whole sort of movement around building bigger buildings. So you have this sort of like kind of crazy architecture around education. You have campuses opening in really kind of like very awkward places, places that I feel I really question some of the locations and places that we're putting campuses, administrators and debt, and you really see that there's this kind of trouble brewing in higher education, and that's really evident to see in, for example, an institution like Cooper Union, which has had a 100+ year history of giving away education, of having free education, and they've lost it. And they've lost it because the board has really squandered the financial resources of the university. So are there alternatives? And that's really the question that we're looking at. And there's this great movement of different schools, different sort of places to learn. Alternatives to the very famous expensive school. We like this idea of really kind of teaching and learning and free. Also a difference between a sort of vertical pedagogy and horizontal pedagogy. And this is probably my favorite image. Carolyn Woolard of the trade school has this great image to describe, like, at the heart what education should be, which is want and have, and finding the right people with the right wants and the right haves and putting them in the same room. And there's also a really rich history of artist schools, artist-based education. Teachable File is a kind of good resource. And we got really excited about this, and we created the School for Poetic Computation. This is we don't have a logo yet. We're still working on our logo. And we have a kind of a nice manifesto. We preach this idea of an anti-vocational school. And this is a school that's not about, it's a school about magic, about building impractical work. And really, it's not about finding a job. We want to convince you that you don't need a job. There's a group of us that are teaching, just awesome people, Amit Bataru, Tayin Choi, Jen Lo, and the four of us are really focused on this idea of poetry and computation. So what is poetic? What is the word poetic? Why focus on poetry? And we really like this word, poetry and poesis. This is an amazing video that I think explains it better than I could. This is the sculptor.
La cochonnerie a commencé avec Raphaël, et c'est une peinture horrible. C'est la fin du magnifique art primitif italien, mais c'est là que le mot art fait son apparition, en plein milieu de la Renaissance.
So the word art.
La notion d'art n'existe pas. Non, aucune notion d'art, ni chez les Égyptiens, ni chez les Mayas, ni chez les Indiens, ni chez les Chinois, ni chez les Grecs, ni nulle part. Ils avaient des gars qui faisaient des choses. La notion même de l'art n'existait pas. Elle a été inventée il y a 350 années. Et on a fait une vaste escroquerie avec ça. Et je trouve qu'un mot qui est mieux, c'est la poésie. Le mot poétique est beau parce que c'est au fond un mot étonnant parce qu'il veut dire vivre. Le mot original veut dire vivre simplement. Mais ça me va. Mais le mot art, c'est de la prochaine.
So he's saying the word art is bullshit. I like the word poetry. It comes from a word which means to live. And we love this idea of poet. Like there's a word, a term used to describe what we do as creative coder, but we love the word poet, computational poet. Just the idea of walking around and saying I'm a coder versus I'm a poet. Just feels nicer to say. And we also like this idea that, so there's a whole sort of culture, you have this culture of sort of demo or die in technology, like you make a demo. And what's amazing is the word demo, you can easily just flip the letters around and, make poems. I also love this idea that poetry is in the back of the bookstore, right? You go into a bookstore, you have to go all the way to the back, and it's this like, these are the self-published books. There's not big publishing houses in poetry. Nobody makes money in poetry. You lose money in poetry. But these are the things that are about, what it means to be human, what it means to be alive. Okay, yeah. But my father's an English teacher, and so when I watch movies like The Dead Poets Society, I get the feeling of, when he was teaching us and teaching his students about poetry and about the beauty of poetry. And I try to explain what I mean when we say poetic, and I have a really good example. This is from the Venice Biennial, and these are two projects that I used to compare. And the first project, so the Venice Biennial happens every other year. It's an art show in Venice. And this is a project by a Japanese artist, and she made a giant UFO. And she worked with an Italian shipmaker. And this UFO is really beautiful. It's really gorgeous. And you wait in line, and you put brainwave meters on your head. And then you go in this UFO, and there's an animation that's playing, and it's supposed to be based on what you're feeling, how your brain is working. And I waited in line. I waited for about an hour and a half, and I had no idea about what the relationship of what I was seeing and what I was feeling was. And this project is crazy. If you look at the credits for this project, it's like a movie, right? This is $1 million artwork. And you turn the corner, and I just turned the corner in Venice, and there was an art piece by an artist named Laura Bellum, who's a Brazilian artist. And she put two boats in the water. And this project is called The Lovers. And there are two boats that are looking at each other, and there are lights that are blinking at each other, right? That's it. There's just two rowboats that are sort of docked in the water, and there are lights that are blinking back and forth. And sometimes these lights are in sync, and sometimes these lights are out of sync. And here's this project that, speaks so eloquently to what it means to be human, to what it means to communicate, to what it means to be alive. And I think we have this notion when we create art with technology that we need to make this UFO, but actually it's these small projects, these small gestures that can tell us so much. And we've been preaching this idea of art in poetry as an immune system, that it's this kind of immune system. There is kind of great examples of how language and computation work, and this is where we get sort of inspired for the research in the school. This is Proteus Poetica, this whole idea of Proteus poems, based on the mythical Proteus. These are poems that take one line of text and rearrange them. So this is a poem from the 17th century after the 30 Years' War that sort of devastated Europe, and it took this one line saying, please, Lord, give us peace in this time, and rearrange the words, really algorithmically, and just writing this one line multiple times, just taking the words and putting them in different orders, like an anagram. Apollinaire's visual poems, here I put it side by side with some obfuscated code. Just this idea of poetry as visual form and how it relates to code, we're really excited about. The work of Kenneth Goldsmith, who teaches classes in uncreative writing, and this idea of doing poetry without actually making new words, but finding words that are out there and rearranging them. And he really preaches this idea that it's an amazing time to be a poet, because so much of our world is built around language now. And you see this if you're in the airplane and the entertainment system restarts itself. You just see it spewing words, right? There's words everywhere. The words are underlying our world at the moment. And we wanted to create a place, like a place where you could be reading books simultaneously. You could be reading, Madness, Rack and Honey, Mary Ruefle's amazing lectures about what it means to write and consume poetry, along with the C programming language by Kernighan and Ritchie. So what is non-poetic computation, right? We're trying to figure out what it means, what poetic computation means. What is non-poetic computation? Non-poetic computation really looks like this. New, faster, better, awesome.
Born mobile.
We're born mobile.
You gotta be mobile if you want to be a top dog. Or a tough-ass warrior.
Or super popular.
Or a CEO.
Just a moment the world has been waiting for.
Today, everything changes.
We wanted to take that model one step further.
We are taking it one step further.
The next big thing.
The next generation. The next generation.
Best-in-class smartphone in the world.
This is
Fast, great, really fast, faster, 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 faster than that. Great, really fast. Great.
And it's this, it's new, in your face. And the thing that's really shocking is that we're building the future, right? We're building the future with technology, but we're building it in conference centers, right? We're talking about it in conference centers. And what happens in a conference center when the conference is over? They take it down. It's empty. It's a place without history. And do we want the future being created in a place without history? And I would argue that instead of those CEOs on stage, we want people like Gabriella Coleman, we want Why the Lucky Stiff, we want Aaron Schwartz, rest in peace. We want people like that on stage talking about building and shaping the future. And that's what we're about. I have a bunch of projects if you're curious, but I'm going to end by showing just a ton of photographs. This is my attempt to show you what the last 5 weeks of the School of Poetic Computation has been like. And I'm just going to flick through it. Here you're going to see a lot of sort of craziness, a lot of going outside, building, trying to build a computer from the ground up, thinking about the first principles of computation, trying to learn, trying to take notes, read books, experiment. There's a lot of cooking, a lot of drinking beer. What you'll notice is that it's not a computer lab, right? We're not sitting in front of a screen, but we're trying to create a space for reimagining what's possible. I'm gonna go as fast as I can. I like this. He serves pizza wearing a pizza shirt. More than anything, we wanted to create a home, and that's what the School for Poetic Computation is about. It's what I think this medium needs, and this is the trouble that I've gotten myself into. That I don't know how I'm going to get myself out of this trouble, but this is what I've started. Thank you.